am Nongcebo Vukile McKenzie, and this is the podcast, Sawubona. Every fortnight, a guest joins us for a conversation or to share a story. It's a pleasure to share these with you and to have you with us. Welcome, Ngiyakwamukela, to another episode of Nongcebo McKenzie, the podcast.
Thank you to everyone for joining us in the room today, and thank you very much to our guest, as Zama has introduced you, but I'll just reintroduce you again. I'll take it from the far right, Euphemia Mohammed, Karen Lekransi, as well as Siyasanga Kasha, and we're talking about something, what I really liked after we watched the video, is that little tagline at the end, securing the future you've worked hard for. Now, that future looks different for everyone, dependent on one, two, or three things. The first is how you handle the retirement at the end when you get to actually retiring, how you handle your preservation fund and planning for your retirement, and how you handle your finances during your employment journey. So, Karen, I'm going to come straight to you and ask about that. How people are handling their planning for retirement, how people are handling their benefits, their awareness of their benefits. Let's talk about that. You are in HR, you head up employee benefits for Momentum Group. Let's talk about what that picture looks like on a typical day for a typical employee about their employee benefits.
So I think a couple of things comes to mind. I think what is very important is that when an employee starts with us, they are very excited. It's a lot of information they have to absorb over and above settling into a new role, getting a fay with their job. It's a lot of information in that first month around the employment contract, their benefits, etc. So what we see is a lot of employees, they attend the first month induction sessions, they get information on their employee benefits, but it almost like it goes over their heads, if that makes sense. So it doesn't really penetrate. So, and because you do not engage with retirement scheme benefits on a daily basis, what then often happens is that they only really realize what they have or don't have at the time when an event takes place. So a key outcome is there's definitely a lack of knowledge and understanding around employee benefits, retirement scheme benefits. And in the unfortunate situation, we've recently had two colleagues that passed away that didn't, for example, nominate beneficiaries. And that is benefits they've got access to. They've paid for it as an employee, and then the family can't provide them with a proper burial. So that's really heartbreaking and sad. In the event of becoming disabled and incapacitated to work, you've got access to disability benefits that you've been paying for years, but maybe you lowered your pensionable or your risk salary, and then your disability benefit gets impacted. So I think the biggest thing, the key is lack of knowledge and understanding, and almost at the point of entry into organization, getting information. But I always say it's like running a marathon, right? So you need to work at it. Every year is a kilometer. And so if you don't make the time for every kilometer, you're not going to reach your end goal in terms of your time. So it's important, especially when life events happen, such as getting married, divorce, getting a baby. For sure, when you get a baby, you're going to add that baby to your medical scheme to protect for medical cover. So why won't you do the same in terms of protecting your family? It's important that you, especially at life events, take ownership and make sure that your family is protected, that your beneficiaries are completed, and that you review your risk benefits and you understand your investment options. We also see with staff, as they get closer to retirement, they might take more note around the preservation or their funds, and then, and I say this with respect, it's sometimes too late. They are shocked about the values that they've saved through the years. So there is financial advice available. It's so important that you review it annually. We've got amazing resources. We've got amazing teams such as retirement benefit counselors that can support staff with that education and knowledge and understanding through their career with us.
Thank you for highlighting that, because, as I said earlier, we generally think about these things at retirement. And you obviously contextualize that we actually think about these things at the happening of an event. And if you live a generally uneventful life, if anybody ever does, but you don't meet these things that impact your employee benefits after you have children and after you've done all that, you've set it up, right? So why are you going to revisit it? In actual fact, I hadn't looked at any of my planning for anything until we started recording this podcast series. Since I had started working, and I've been working for 25 years, because in my mind, I had sorted it out. I'm sorted. When I retire, when I hit 60, when I hit 65, when I stop working, I'm actually going to have something in the kitty. And that's why immediately we think about it in the context of retirement. But it's not just about retirement, it's about how you handle it all leading up to that. And Euphemia, your testimonial speaks exactly to that, about how you handled it. Share with us.
Thank you, everyone. So, as I mentioned, a few years ago, I was diagnosed with breast cancer, and I never knew about the dread disease benefit until I actually started attending this podcast. So, that benefit really assisted me. At times, you find out that your medical aid don't cover all the co-payments, and I actually used all that for my medical aid finances, and it really assisted me. And I must say, there's nothing that scares you as much as cancer. But when you know you're on the right path and you stick to your plan and your goals, things tend to work out. So I'm grateful to sit here today and to share my story. Thank you.
I'm going to come to Siyasanga because from what Karen and Euphemia have shared, Siyasanga, is that your employment is not just about your salary, which is what a lot of us focus on. And unfortunately, for those who do have an option to not take these out, where it's not compulsory, or if maybe they're freelancing or whatever the case might be, they don't bother about this because they're looking at the money that comes into their pocket at the end of the month so that they can meet their monthly needs. However, as we are having these conversations, what is really evident is that these are very, very important. The power of being employed beyond just your salary.
So I think often what we get wrong is we look at employee benefits as like perks or just another deduction in our salary slip. Mm-hmm. Not really about, a tool that positions us for financial stability. Mm-hmm. And a tool that also, sets us up to protect our families and also contribute to the economy. I mean, if you think about a young person, let's talk about Thabo. I think it's Tabang. In series 4, you'll see later. Young gentleman, he does have employee benefits. We don't say it, but he does. But just think about him starting at work. And we take for granted that low-income earners and youth have access to employee benefits. So Thabo is starting out. Ideally, he should start saving, when he starts working, so that he can build up for, his retirement. Mm-hmm. He can learn about benefits, understand them, use them, value them, so that he doesn't have to tap into his, I think in the series we refer to it as chop, his money. But that he understands that there are other products available for him to access. When we look at stats, we see that only 44% of youth have actually access to employee benefits. That is a missed opportunity for us, because when an advisor, gets the ability to guide a young individual or a low-income earner, that may have income loss at some point, and provide them with cover so that they still have dignity, and they can still support their families, will be doing, a lot to contribute to the economy.
I like what you emphasize about protecting your family, right? And I'll go back to using the retirement example, because that's the one we're exposed to mostly. Employee benefits is not just about retirement. You've explained that, Karen. But let me just use the retirement example, because what you will hear when, let's say, the head of the family passes away, the breadwinner of the family, whether it be the mother, whether it be the father. Actually, let me step it back from that. When somebody gets a job and they get a good job where there are employee benefits, you will know this, Siyasanga, because good to makufika nje ekhaya. uyazi nje siyasanga uthola umsebenzi omuhle
Yeah.
kunane pension kunane medical sebenza kahle awuyazi ngiyayibongela ingane they'll have prayer because you got a job where you've got medical aid and you've got pension. And the same thing you will see that when the head of the family passes away again. Because if they've managed their employee benefits well, and again I'll make the example with the pension, that you will see how there is almost a visible load lifted off the shoulders. They'll be like, Ziphumile imali zababweni, sengikhokhele yonke into. But now what happens often is, and this is, with most families, there will be that one person who is convincing whoever's going into retirement, kuyatradwa kwenziwa ukuthi kuneitokfela zokuthi kunokuthi renovator there's this there's that you can now use your retirement funds for. And this part about protecting your family doesn't kick in only then when you get that lump sum or whatever it is that you're getting at retirement, because the protecting of your family then kicks in before that, so that those people who are, we observe trends and then we see these trends and we're still living at home with our parents, and when they retire we say, yes, magasibani bathenga iplasma. Nathi fanele sibe neplasma like her, and we convince ugogo ukuthi afake amakhabethe. Gogo doesn't even cook anymore, but we make her put in a whole new kitchen scheme. But the protection happens way leading up to that. Let's talk about that, the protecting your family from that will happen at the end.
So for example, some of the products or solutions that we've got in employee benefits is early wage access. It's also being able to access your emergency savings so that you don't have to dip into your two-pot. So for example, if there's a situation at home to support the family, you can, access your savings and you don't have to tap into your retirement benefit. So that's another example. Another example could be, we're seeing employee benefits transform to start talking to the human needs, for your staff at work. An example is trauma counseling or mental well-being. And that's also, extended to your family members. So it's important that we understand, those benefits as well, so that throughout, your life stages, you are able to tap into these solutions or services to support your family. So not only financial, but also emotional well-being.
Okay. And I like the reference to two-part, because there are obviously 3 episodes leading up to this conversation that we're having today. And I know he won't be visible on camera, but Tsepo and and Sipho, who is also in the room, and some of the other retirement benefit counselors really unpack that and how you can handle that in a responsible fashion so that you don't find yourself in a bit of a bind at the end. But Karen, one of the things that you mentioned is that we sort of, you mentioned, but it's also lived experience. We lock this at the back of our minds. We lock it up in a room. I sorted it out. I did the administration. I know my premiums go up by whatever percentage they go up with on an annual basis. And it leads us to not understanding our employee benefits, some of which you explained a little bit earlier. Let's go into why we don't understand them so that we can fix that and understand them better.
So I think, again, as I've mentioned at the start, I think it's important that each one of us takes accountability and ownership to protect our family and to build for our future. I think that's important. So, again, there are so much resources, information, teams available to support our employees with information, with knowledge. I always encourage staff. Annual review time is coming up. In our company, it happens in October. That is an ideal time of the year to just take stock, almost like stock take. Like just take stock of how is my retirement schemes tracking? Am I still on track? Have I got a little bit extra to put towards my retirement saving? Because it's annual increase time, you might be able to put a little bit away. Even if you make an additional voluntary contribution of 150 Rand, that is better than nothing, and how that accumulates over a period of 20 years. And what we also need to understand is that a lot of time for employees, what they've got access to from the employer around saving towards retirement, it's it. They might not have external investments or assets or anything to tap into. And your earlier point struck with me in terms of you start with a company 25 years ago, you think it's taken care of. It might have been sufficient at the point when you started as a graduate or from school, but now life has evolved. You've got a family, you need to leave a legacy for them behind. So I think it's just important to, even if you once a year take stock, reach out to a financial advisor, get the advice. It's important also to look at savings, emergency savings. We often get requests from staff, my car broke down, I don't have any emergency savings. They ask for a salary advance, etc. And I think we are in tough economic circumstances, but I always hear the little angel and the little devil on my shoulder when I go shopping, is it a need? Is it a want? So I do think if we're really, really honest with ourselves, I do think even if we put a small amount away, we can to make provision for a rainy day emergency, and then over and above that, to make proper provision for when you hit retirement.
In one of the episodes that we did, Tsepo put that so nicely into context, because he said, the question I'd asked was, it's tough out there, everything's expensive. The only thing we're not paying for is breathing, but everything costs money, and it costs a lot of money. I took the grocery till slip out yesterday, and we were going through it, and I was looking at it. Bread is 20 Rand. I remember bread being 70 cents. And you think, oh my goodness, it's 20 Rand. But now if you've got to go to work and you've got to take 2 taxis to work and you've got to remember to buy bread at the end of the day and whatever the children will need, that you need maybe 300 Rand just to get those things together, to go to work, come back, get the little supplies just to tide you over for the week. That's a lot of money. And I said, but Tsepo, it's not doable. It's a lot. And he said, Piki makmier. It's not about the amount, it's the little bit that you put away. But what he also then said is, don't look at savings as though you're depriving yourself. This for me, he said, don't look at saving like you're depriving yourself. Look at saving and becoming debt-free so that you can plan your finances, so that you can pay yourself when your company is no longer paying you. I thought that was beautiful.
And that's the moral of the
because
story.
You are working towards being able to have the same standard of life that your organization is giving you now by you having a salary when they are no longer doing that. And Euphemia, you did that. You are not even 60 yet. You've paid off your entire bond. I am so inspired because I always look at my bond statement. I look at my bond statement at tax return time and I'm like, how am I going to get out of this bit? And you just think, 30 years, we all live for the 30-year repayment period or the 20-year repayment period, and you didn't.
Now, I was going to say, as you were talking about looking at your grocery list, I stopped for amagunya the other day on the side of the road, so that's like fat cakes, right? And I asked how much. They're small, they're like little round ones, very tasty. And I said, how much are they? And the guy said 3 Rand for one. And I'm like, the last time I bought one was 60 cents.
But also,
when did we get to 3 Rand?
They've gone smaller though. They used to be the big ones, like the big ones, like the size of a grapefruit.
Yeah.
Yes, they've gone smaller.
So yeah, I mean, as you are talking and as we're having the conversation, I'm just reminded that I too, the last time I've never checked whether my retirement is going to be sufficient for the lifestyle that I want once I retire. Because if I look at my mother now, she planned well, but still her finances are not sufficient to cover up expenses. And I think it's really about us thinking, how do we break that cycle? It's not just, black tax? It's not just black tax. I think it goes across all cultures, basically. But really, we're at the end of our retirement, we always have to patch something. I'm not saying let's not take responsibility. I mean, these are our parents. But it's just something that I thought of as we're having.
Yeah, but as you're saying, that the patching gets less if we plan better.
Exactly.
There's going to be less to patch.
Yeah.
And also, again, Not to make it all doom and gloom, but there are no guarantees. You know, sikhule kunalento ukuthi yabona nje buka nje abafana bami bazokhula bangigade. Buka nje ngizele kugcwele amantombazane ngeke ngize ngihlupheke ngohlala kantodakazi. And that's not guaranteed anymore. It's not guaranteed. Children are leaving. They're going to be based overseas. Some of them can't find jobs. There are many things that happen. And you don't want a situation where, again, the decisions that we make, if you've got the opportunity to protect your family, we are then making decisions that don't protect them. And that's the importance of this conversation.
So I like what Sandra said with regards to the black ticks. I think for me, what really led up to my current state, I had to learn to say no. And I think that's the start of everything.
May I ask who you had to learn to say no to so that we can put this in context for people?
So, you know, when you have a husband that feels as if he is the savior of the family. You know, the siblings aren't working. I need to stand up for them. Unfortunately, I always say to myself, imagine if both of us was that way. We definitely wouldn't have reached anything in life. So I'm grateful. Just to also mention, during COVID, I bumped into this. I call him a giant in my life because he really assisted me in my journey. Krisen Munsemi. So I will always say this, you know, the little things from saving. I never even knew that you can actually, guys, go onto PeopleSoft with every increase that I've been getting, be it a bonus, you go onto PeopleSoft and you just change your percentage that you want to put away. It starts with discipline, you know. And I was saying to the gentleman earlier, I said, sometimes I feel like a cheapskate because I don't believe in changing your car whenever the one is paid up, you know. I don't believe in buying a new phone when the contract is ended. I stay with it. It still serves its purpose. So that really helps me. And the importance of having a budget and sticking to it. Like I spoke to Krisen, I think it was a month ago, and I said to him, you know, Krisen, so he said to me, Femia, congratulations, because I had to just share. I always say that there's this story in the Bible that I love so much of, I think it's the leper. It was a few lepers, and they actually turned back, and there was one that turned back, and he went and he said, thank you. So I went to Krisen and I said to him, I have to say thank you to you because my bond has been paid up. And I don't know why when we've achieved something in life, you feel like you're bragging, you know. And I said, but why am I feeling that way? It was blood, sweat, tears, and pain at the end of it, you know. So I'm really grateful. So that's my journey, you know. Learn to say no and stick to your no. And don't incorporate all these bad behaviors.
But again, what you are saying about going onto PeopleSoft and increasing your percentage, that's something Sipho mentioned also, that even with any of your benefits that you need to pay towards, you don't need to pay the minimum amount. Top it up. You can pay extra. You can put a little bit more in. But what I'm curious about is this balance between, and it's, you feel but it's hard. You know, oh gosh. The balance between I still have a long life to live and I want to enjoy, and the I'm living now, you know? Because you walk into the shop and everything looks nice, but you know the donuts look so much nicer on payday. Do you know? I promise you, I don't know what it does. You know, somebody said this the one time and said, if you've got a little bit of extra cash, especially extra cash that you didn't expect to have it in your pocket, you can't sit still. You can't stay at home when there's extra cash. And I promise you, am I the only one that experiences this? But if you've got, even if somebody gave me 200 rand, like somebody gave, you're like, oh, God, I'd like to give you 200 rand. I've got cash to burn. I must go. I've got places to go. Leave me alone. I've got 200 rand. But on payday, when you go into the shops, even if you know that your debit orders haven't come off yet, even if you know that the space between debit orders and is very, very small. The donuts look nice, but also it's not, you can't just have one donut, ne? Because now you've got to buy a little bit more, and then I need to wash this donut down with something. But I must have this donut now as dessert to something, so let me buy something at the shop now. I'm not going to cook now. So it's all these, it feels like, nice time. And how do we, first of all, do that? And secondly, teach our children and teach our siblings that it's okay going nice time, or maybe nice time. You think let's just reduce, because to take it away completely, it's a bit traumatic. How did you rewire yourself? Number one, how did you pass that on to your children, and how did you pass that on to the savior of the family? Because now you're the bad guy. You're the bad guy.
For me, I started saying no without feeling guilty. That's the main important thing. You have to say no and don't feel guilty. If I take my son as an example, Gabriel. I think Gabriel takes after me, because whenever Gabriel goes to the movies, he takes juice from home.
No, Euphemia, I'm from Durban, so I know what happens in the movies. We bring containers of food to the movies.
They take juice from home. They shoot their own popcorn at home. They don't shop when they're hungry, because that's definitely when you shop when you're hungry, and you just so tempted. I want this donut has got my name on there. But what I can advise you, instead of going to Krispy Kreme, which donut is 25 rand, rather go to Spar. Spar's one is nice as well,
Not when I've got 200 rands from Gogo, Euphemia. I am going.
Yeah, so that's really what happens for me.
Nice?
It's nice.
But I get that. But again, it goes to what you were saying, Karen, that it's the understanding of how this will impact you long term. So when employees come into your office and they are now at an event, or they are now at a crisis, or they're retiring in 6 months, and you look at them and you're like, yeah, in 6 months, but there's been all this time. Let's give them pointers now as to what to start thinking about when. Obviously, everybody's journey is different. Obviously, everybody approaches things differently, but I think maybe we could benchmark some things.
Yeah, so a couple of things there. We implemented a late stage career practice 2 years ago, and really it's the name, what it says. It's your last phase of your career, 10 years before retirement. So we really encourage staff specifically 10 years from retirement, not only because I will also, from my expert colleagues, always get the message that yes, there might be a year left or 5 years left. It's never too late. You can still you can still push in terms of making some extra provision. But 10 years to retirement is a good time to not only look at, am I on track for my retirement to retire well financially, but also preparing yourself emotionally. You mentioned earlier on, retirement is a huge life event. It's a huge life event. I mentioned to you earlier this morning that you get colleagues in the office, they're like, yes, I'm a year from retirement, and you're shocked. You're like, no, you cannot be close to 60. Impossible. It's like 60 is the new 45. So people definitely don't feel almost like an emotional level ready for retirement. So it's important that they get that support. We've got a wonderful EAP program to support staff. And also in terms of their career, last 10 years of your career, you might still want to achieve something this time. Or more importantly, how am I setting myself up post-retirement? So I want to link it back to your question. I'm now 6 months from retirement. Perhaps now I haven't been too vigilant about tracking my retirement savings, and I sit with a financial advisor, I sit with the RBC team, and I see, sure, this is not sufficient for me to be able to live from. then you need to look at, okay, how are you going to set yourself up for post-retirement? You've built a lot of skills, experience, etc. Are you going to look for alternative contract work or anything else to also support you financially? So I always say it's never too late, whatever your situation, but it's important to have the conversations with the right people to support you. And we're definitely there to help you through this journey. I think another very important point is that it is so important that staff don't put their head almost like an ostrich in the ground. Like, often people think, oh my goodness, no, my retirement savings at this point, I know it's not enough. What am I going to do? And they almost want to put their head in the sand. Don't lift your head. Have the conversation, because we've just mentioned you can make small incremental changes, as we've said, by contributing an extra 200 Rand, 250 Rand a month as an additional voluntary contribution. Lift your head, take accountability, have the conversations. I honestly feel it's never too late.
Let's talk about the decisions that we make when we resign. Whether we are resigning because I've just had enough and I'm gone, I'm out of here, or you're resigning to go to another job. You know, I was actually speaking to someone last year that I had just met, and they'd started a new role, and it was a freelance role, but they had a long, work history in project management. And I said, but how come you're freelancing? And she said, well, she couldn't get a permanent job, and she had expenses that she needed to pay. And then she proceeded to share why she had resigned. So she had resigned from her permanent job 3 years earlier because her dad was ill, and there are 3 sisters. And she's the middle sister. The one sister moved far away, and the other sister is married. And so she's also married, but she lives closer to their dad. And she is the one who is more on the financial contribution side. They all play their part, but people play their part differently. And she said because of the weight of the medical bills and because her mom had passed away, she resigned so that she could take her money and then go and look after her dad. And she also then said it wasn't just about her dad, it was also because she had a lot of debt. And she was looking at the fact that her children were going to need to go to university soon, and she was in debt, and she hadn't saved enough at that stage for her children to go to university. And I'm looking at this ball of issues that now get solved by the money that you will then take out when you resign. Obviously, legislation has affected that, two-part has affected that to some extent, but let's talk about resignation and how it will then impact your retirement savings.
No, that's obviously the sad reality is we've also had cases like that with staff where they resign to tap into their retirement savings. I think that should really, really always be the last resort, because to tap into your retirement savings that you've accumulated for 10 years, how are you going to make that up? I think the one, if I may say this boldly, the one slight positive around two-pot is really in terms of preventing that, so that if you then have got a crisis and you need to tap in and you need to pay off debt, rather than resigning, we know that it's not always so easy to find another job. Yeah. Forget about just the fact that you've tapped into your retirement savings that is there for retirement and how are you going to make it up. So I would just say it's important, get help, get financial advice, debt counseling. There's always a way out. I think the last resort should always be to resign to tap into your retirement savings, because to make that up it's going to be very, very hard and difficult. So speak to an advisor, get debt counseling assistance. There's been a lot of staff that's gotten help through the debt counseling services to really prevent a scenario like that.
But Siyasanga, this then links back to what you said earlier in terms of the power of being employed beyond just your salary, but also that employee benefits are a tool for wealth building, and it's how you handle them that impacts that.
I just also wanted to comment on the fact that I too once also took money when I changed jobs twice. Wow. Right? And then when, for the life of me, I did not put it towards my bonds. I did something, It was something around black tax.
But you know,
That's why I took the money.
the reason I ask is a lot of people can't point to a specific thing that they did with it. A lot of people can't point to a specific thing. No, it's usually these little things. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I got the shock of my life when I landed at Momentum one day. And I saw my retirement. I was like, you have to be kidding me. I've been working for over 15 years. You've got to be telling me I've got more than that. So it was a reality check, I must say. So it happens to the best of us. But I like the angle or the reiteration that it's not too late to, increase your contribution, and make up the gap. On the wealth question, so if you were to ask me what is the most strongest tool we have to creating financial wealth or household wealth, I would say it's employee benefits. Key reasons for that, we see that firstly, 1/3 of households in South Africa have employee benefits. And that 1/3, that small percentage, they contribute 60% to household wealth in South Africa. So the more people have employee benefits, the more wealth we are creating, for our economy as well. And then we also see that pension and insurance are the largest asset class, pension and insurance products, the largest asset class in South Africa, even more than homes and investments. And then we see that a 1% increase in employee benefits leads to a 0.31% increase in GDP. And we know that where GDP grows, more employment. When employment grows, more benefit participation. So it's really a tool to not only eradicate poverty, not only to contribute to economic growth, but also, to contribute to sustainable financial wealth as well.
So, Euphemia, you've been able to do a lot with your employee benefits. But what you mentioned is that when you realized is when you found out that you had breast cancer, and then you found out that you've got cover that could assist you with that. Looking back now, obviously understanding that you've covered a lot of ground, and that is really something to applaud. If you look back on your employment journey, what do you wish you'd known from that first salary?
I would definitely say if I knew that you can actually increase the percentage of your savings on PeopleSoft, I would have done it earlier. I always say it's never too late to start saving, and start saving early. Just to also mention, I've managed to put a son of mine through varsity, and he's a computer scientist today. And I think because of the way I live, not below my means, please don't understand me wrong, guys, but as I mentioned, he's a computer scientist, and we're doing well, So I believe that if I had an opportunity to redo it again, I definitely would have started earlier, saving earlier. And just to also hint, Sanda or Karen, guys, don't be alarmed. When you turn 50, you will get that email to say that you're 50. So that pre-retirement, don't be scared of it. Consult a consultant, make use of them. They're there, they provide the service. They're great, guys. Don't be scared, they won't bite you.
Karen, to put this in context, because your office would witness a lot of the heartbreak that comes with not managing your employee benefits to their maximum potential. But you would also be interfacing with people and their families and their family members when those events do happen. And now families are left with, but dad was working, but mom was working, and now we're stuck here and we don't know what to do. And this is something that really, really happens. You put somebody as the beneficiary and they pass on before you, and you don't update your forms. And then you pass on and your family comes to the office and they come to HR, and it's now a groot gemors. So what would you say, just to put it in context, is the worst that could happen? that you would really encourage people to avoid by all means by understanding their employee benefits and implementing that understanding?
So I think two main pointers is cannot over communicate and stress the point of updating your beneficiaries. Because the reality is, I think I mentioned it earlier, is that you have paid for those benefits. You have paid to make provision for your family to leave a legacy. You've worked many years. Whatever, and death doesn't discriminate. You can be young, old, whatever. So, cannot overstress the importance of updating your beneficiaries, reviewing it annually. It's made now so simple via the digital benefit statement process and link. Not only you can access that benefit statement at any time to see how your retirement savings and investments are tracking and what your risk benefits are, but via that process link, you can quick, 1 minute it takes for you to update. So take that responsibility, make it a point, especially where life events happen. In the event of adding dependents, taking dependents off, getting divorced, make sure, because your ex can still be your attached and unattached group life, and then there's going to be problems.
Especially if you get remarried and you've got the first husband
and so
as a beneficiary.
I think there's plenty of even colleagues in the room that can tell lots of stories around that. So we really don't want, the ex to get the money. But in all seriousness, I can't stress that more. And then I think it is, we always say from an onboarding perspective, again, it's a lot of information you have to absorb. Even if you just remember this, who can I contact? Even if you can't remember who to contact, go and speak to your HR. They are there to help you and redirect you so that you, as you on an annual basis are very excited to see your increase letter. If you're lucky to get a bonus, your bonus letter, make it a priority. It's almost like an annual event. Okay, it's that time of the year. I need to look at how my investments are tracking. Is my risk benefit still on track? Because I'm going to use an example just of myself. As we're getting older, I might not, in 2 or 3 years' time, because my kids are big, might not need that amount of life cover. My house is paid off or things like that. So maybe now I can put that extra into my retirement savings. So it's just reviewing your life phases where you're at. It's very, very important. And we even prompt our staff, I don't know if you guys know this, the RBC team can attest, is we've even built in type of email triggers and notifications when you are making changes to your medical aid, or when you are going on maternity leave, or even parental leave, daddies, whatever. We remind you, reach out to the RBC. Maybe it's a good time for you to have a convo on reviewing your benefits. So that's what I would really say. That the biggest heartbreak, to come back to your question, is really where money cannot be paid to the dependents as deserving, that should be taken care of, because you didn't take that 2 minutes just to update your beneficiary forms or to complete it.
Thank you, Karen. And Siasanga, securing the future that you've worked for, and to borrow from Zebo, making sure that when the organization that you work for is no longer paying you because you have now retired, that you can still pay yourself based on how you conducted your employee benefits. If you can just sort of summarize that for us in terms of how to best approach that.
I'll leverage on what Karen has already touched on. So annual review of your portfolio, understanding of the benefits that are available to you, where you might, I guess all of us from time to time need savings or emergency or access to funds. Make sure that you have, prepared for that as best as possible so that you save your retirement fund for retirement. Consult a retirement benefit counselor. They are there for that reason, to support you and assist you. Consult an advisor as well when you need to, look at your financial needs analysis as well. So I would say that, and then make sure that you save. You don't have to buy everything on payday. So yeah, there's always an opportunity to save.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Siyasanga. Thank you, Karen. And thank you, Euphemia.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the podcast. Remember, you can like the episode and share the podcast link, as well as listen to more episodes on the channel. Subscribe to the channel for more. Siyabonga. Thank you for listening.